the Innie's lives are intended to exist without any type of intimacy.
Yes.
And so anything that they do like this, there's just sort of like a politicized rebellion to it, no matter what. That type of exploration is one of the ways that you explore your identity and explore who you really are.
But it also shows that there are different versions of what resistance can look like. It's not just about taking down LUMON. It's about reclaiming every part of what makes them feel like a human. And that intimacy part is just as important.
Crazy Stupid Podcast.
Thank you so much for tuning in. As always, if this is your first time watching, we'd love it if you could hit the like button, the subscribe button, and the bell so that you are aware of when we post things.
Hi, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Crazy Stupid Podcast. My name is Esther.
And I'm Adrian.
And we are here to talk about Severance Season 2, Episode 6. That's how I'm going to say it when we record.
You look like you're about to do Christmas carols. All right. Well, anyways, another banger episode. With
Absolutely
Severance.
Phenomenal. My first question, I have questions about Rugabi, the doctor.
Bro, is she sus?
I just feel like we don't know anything about her.
And she always, maybe it's just like I would want a doctor that feels a little bit more calm, but she be making me rattle.
She has a lot of anxious energy about her.
It's like, bro.
But I feel like we don't really know what her motives are. Like, not really.
Is she just trying to take down LUMON? Is there something else there? Like,
I don't really
know.
And it's like, I don't know why, but I got the impression that she was working with other people.
Is it just her
But
PD? Was that what it was?
I don't know. I also,
Dang, bro.
This is coming from, I don't know if you have seen Fantastic Frankie's series this month about Do They Know How to Write Black People?
Yeah.
Is Dr. Rugabi a magical Negro? Like Loki.
Okay, walk me through why you think Severance is doing that for her.
Okay, well, a magical Negro is when there is a black supporting character that possesses some sort of special ability to help the protagonist. They don't really get much of a storyline of their own. Their sole purpose in the story is to aid the white protagonist. And that's basically how she functions.
But it's like science, though. You feel like it's still kind of...
Yeah, it doesn't have to be magic. It's like some sort of ability. Like she has something that he needs that he cannot do that she can do.
Yeah.
And we don't know anything about her at all. Does she have a family? Like, who are her friends? Like,
I don't know.
What is her community? Where did she come from? Like, we don't know anything. I'm like, are we gonna get more? Like, oof. At the very beginning of the episode when he was talking about Gemma, because we left off last week, he had the flashback and he saw her, and then she was like, when you get her out, it'll be you and her out here together. And I was like, that just seems like really idealistic. It just seems like you're selling him a fairy tale.
That's what I felt. It felt like she was trying to give Mark a lie to latch on
like
to.
Get him to do it, and that makes me really suspicious of her.
I want to talk about Helly, man. This was such a great episode for Helly because the way that Severance shot both intimacy scenes with Helena and Helly, I felt like were so intentional.
Yes, I went back and watched the other one because I needed to compare them.
It says a lot. In the scene with Helena and Mark, it was very much her sort of being the one pursuing everything, her wanting to gain something, her wanting to feel like she is seeking after her own satisfaction, right? In some ways, like initiating a lot of the encounters there. In this instance, I noticed a lot of difference with just the camera shots. Like there was a lot more close-ups with like where Mark and Helly were putting their hands and like the hand placement. There were a lot of moments where like Mark asked Helly for consent, right? Which I thought was a big deal. And then Mark is going out of his way to make sure that she feels pleasured first, that she feels satisfied first. And I loved what the showrunner said in the behind the scenes where they said this was Helly's emancipation from Helena. And I thought that was the perfect way to describe it.
Yes, I was definitely thinking about, I like that word emancipation. I had not thought about that, but I was definitely
thinking. Is it because
thinking,
you're black? I'm going to keep that in, but just know we considered editing that out.
I really like that word emancipation. I had definitely been thinking about how this was like an act of resistance. Like it was as much like something personal that they both wanted and needed as it was like an act of resistance. Like there was something politicized about it too. And I like that right before it happened, they showed all the flashes of like all these other moments of intimacy in different ways. Like they showed Dylan kissing his wife. They, you know, they flashed to the kiss at the elevator. They flashed to the scene with Helena and Mark in the tent, all of that. And I liked that because it just reminded me that the workplace is meant to be a place without any type of intimacy, right? Like that is how that kind of thing is not supposed to happen there. And so it goes to follow then that the Innie's lives are intended to exist without any type of intimacy.
Yes.
You only exist in work. And so they actually intended for you to never experience this, ideally. And so anything that they do like this, there's just sort of like a politicized rebellion to it, no matter what, because they were never supposed to have this. And it made me think about how when you are a part of a marginalized group, so much of your life just becomes inherently political. Because so many things have been taken away from you that when you engage in them, it becomes something more than just you personally engaging in it. And there's like something kind of like sad about that, I think, in a way that like things cannot just be normal. Like I think about this all the time with like Black women's hair. It's like, man, no matter what you do with your hair, it's giving something. It's saying something, right? Just because like how our hair has been politicized. But it just made me think about that with Helly and Mark, because like being intimate like that is an expression of self. Like that is one of the ways, that type of exploration is one of the ways that you explore your identity and explore who you really are. And then you share that and express that with another person. And that word emancipation makes a lot of sense because it's personal to you no matter what. It doesn't matter that you share this body with your outie. It doesn't matter. All of that doesn't matter. This is a moment that only you are getting to have, and you are getting to define it for yourself, and you are getting to express your own self in that moment, and you're not sharing it with them in any way. Right before that, she gives that monologue about how like, you know, she dresses me in these clothes.
Like a baby.
Yes, like all these things that like she does not get to decide for herself that I had not even thought about, honestly. Like I hadn't even considered the fact that like, you get to work and you didn't even put this on.
They pick their food for them throughout the entire week. Like the Outies plan all of that. They pick their clothes. If they're sick the next day, and let's say if the Outie felt sick during work, they have no agency in choosing if they decide to come into work the day after, like all of that. Just
nothing is decided for them. And so this one thing where they get to say like, this is ours, this is our moment, I just think I really love that for them. And I think it's a beautiful act of resistance, and I think it's sad that it has to be that.
But it also shows that there are different versions of what resistance can look like. This is going to feel like a bit of a tangent, like, you know, like the bigger goal obviously is to like take down LUMON, but all throughout that there are other acts of rebellion, other acts of resistance that you can participate in that are just as important, just important in different ways. Like I remember this was like a few years ago, but there were just a lot of conversations about like why Black people didn't rebel against their slave masters more, right? And this like the implication behind the thought process was like weakness.
It's ahistorical.
No, I know, but you know, like they oversimplify with just like a numbers game here. Like there's more people there. Why didn't you do more? And obviously there's a lot there to unpack. But I love what Van Jones said when he was he had a conversation with a bunch of different Black men, but he was like, bro, there was resistance happening on these slave masters' plantations all the time, from getting married to reclaiming their faith in a different way. The list goes on and on and on. Those things were just as important. The faith that we have sort of landed on would not have existed without what our ancestors contributed to that reclaiming of our own spirituality. All of that matters. And that just sort of reminded me of them taking the time in Severance to sit with the fact that like, it's not just about taking down LUMON. It's about reclaiming every part of what makes them feel like a human. And that intimacy part is just as important. Yeah.
I also want to talk about Dylan in this episode. Well, actually, okay, I'm so sorry. Before we do that, I do have to just say this because I have it in my notes. The phrase, we shared vessels. Mark Scout. I also am screaming at the fact that they picked a room where the tints are transparent and there are windows.
They didn't give a flying F, bro.
Beautiful moment between the two of them.
Yeah, absolutely loved it.
I'm happy for them. I want to talk about Dylan.
Yeah.
Because he's really trying to have it both ways right now. He's like, okay, I'm gonna tell my team about the thing that I found, so like this process can be ongoing and the working, it can go on, but like without me though,
Why did he just walk out the room like that and not say anything else?
No, I honestly was confused. At first, I thought he was going to go get something, or I thought he was gonna like check to see if someone was listening and then come back and tell them.
And
then they cut scenes, and I was like, wait.
I mean, I'm glad that Helly did kind of like mention it, like, oh, what the F, like, okay.
Okay, but I have to say, as like somebody who can be kind of awkward, I think I have actually ended conversations that way. Like, without meaning to.
What?
Like, I think sometimes in my head it's like, well, it's done and I don't have anything to say. As much as I want to be frustrated with him, I find myself honestly, I honestly resonate a lot because I feel like he is in a position that a lot of us are in real life where it's like you want to enjoy the convenience of things. You want to enjoy the normalcy of things.
Yeah.
You want to still find contentment in things, but you also know that there's so much wrong in the world. And I think this is especially true of people in America, and even more specifically in blue states, in big cities, people that like geographically have like relative privilege that allows them to like have an awareness of the things happening in the world and take issue of the things happening in the world, but not necessarily deal with the worst of it firsthand. I really think that is Dylan in this instance. Like, we are actually Dylan. We're still trying to keep going on with our day-to-day, our everyday things, while we are literally watching like terrifying democracy crumbling things happening around us. And there's probably things that we can be doing, that we should be doing, but it feels like it would cost us some of our normalcy, some of our convenience. And it's hard to take that step. And I think that's Dylan.
And I sympathize with Dylan the more you sort of share your ideas, primarily because we should be able to have those things.
Yes.
Privileged groups have those things all the time, right? Like, I remember there's all this conversation about RFK wanting to take away the ability to purchase certain food items with food stamps, which is an extremely classist position to have, right? It's the reality of being able to have good choices instead of making good choices, It's that, because I mean, there's the argument about like, I mean, food deserts and things like that, and like communities where like finding nutritious meals is more difficult, and that's real. And then I think there's also the conversation of like, even if they have access to nutritious food, if they want to go get themselves a bag of hot Cheetos one day, let them people get a bag of hot Cheetos one day. We can do the same thing,
right? Yeah, it's the same conversation when people would talk about unhoused people, and they'd be like, don't give them money because you don't know, they might go spend it on drugs. And then I remember somebody said one day, so are you. You spend your money on drugs too.
It's true.
The freedom of choice.
Yes. And that is a luxury that everyone should have.
Everyone should have it, regardless of your resources.
Yes.
And I mean, with that does come, honestly, like also, I mean, you will experience the consequences you experience just like everybody else will. But you deserve the autonomy. Yeah. That's all it is. You deserve to have the autonomy. But yes, I don't know. I really resonate with that with Dylan. I think your prediction was completely correct. I think things are about to get crazy.
And she lied to her husband.
Oh my.
This is the part where it is sad and tragic for Dylan's character, because it's obvious that Dylan's wife has not been fulfilled in a lot of spaces, emotionally, sexually, financially, everything, right? And I can see why it would be very difficult for her to be like, oh my gosh, look at this best version of my husband. She's not really making that distinction all the time when she's interacting with Dylan G, but then when she goes home, that has to be such a jarring reminder of the reality that she's in. And it sucks because you can see that Outie Dylan is like trying to make efforts all the time. Like he's not like a bum, right? Like he's constantly going out to jobs. He's constantly going to get interviews. In this scene alone, when Dylan's talking to his wife, he's talking about this new job opportunity, but she can't get on board with it because she doesn't trust that things will follow through. And I think that idea will crystallize even more with the fact that she sees how consistent Innie Dylan is. And that, I don't know what to make of that. It's tragic for everyone.
There's no good solution.
I know. One thing that I did think was interesting that we have seen more of in this episode. In previous episodes, they did a lot of sort of showing the differences between the Outies and the Innies in Severance, primarily in season 1. In this season, they're showing a lot about how similar they both are in the real world or in the severed world. We see the banter that Helena has with Mark in the restaurant. But some of that flirtatious vibes.
No, it was the same.
Yes.
But I hated it.
It was a little weird.
But I hated it.
But then we got the same thing with Irving and BURT. There was all of this conversation about, at least in this episode, of like what the soul of the Innie and the Outie looks like, especially when we had the conversations with Irving, right? And the distinction that they're trying to make. But I think this season is trying to show them that like,
they're not that different.
Yes.
Yeah.
You know, and I think that's really good writing.
I agree about the Innies and the Outies. And I think this goes back to what we were saying when we were talking about integration. Yeah. And how the only difference between the two identities is just the memories that they have access to. And that once you get rid of that barrier, they just kind of meld to the same person. Where I think it gets kind of tricky is for people like Helly and Helena. Yeah. Because I feel like their Innie and Outie also has completely different value systems. I don't know how those two identities would like gel. Because even that scene where she goes to Mark S in the restaurant, I'm reading the interaction as like it's not a coincidence that they're there at the same place. And it's been hours since their shift ended. It's something about that whole thing just felt so conniving and scheming, and like this desire to just consistently overstep and violate this man in different ways, because there's something about this that is still such an invasion.
They know that her name is Gemma.
Of course.
And so her doing that was the final nail for Mark.
The more that we learn about Helena, Outie Helly, the less I feel like she will turn. I feel like some of her actions feel a little bit more irredeemable, and it'll be kind of hard to square. Like,
this is my issue with Helena, bro. She's a rich white woman. And yeah, there are moments where sexism will play a role, where misogyny will show up. But at the end of the day, her anger is not at the fact that women are experiencing misogyny. Her anger is that it's happening to her. Like, she claimed to Mark in that moment where she was like, I'm practically the owner of the company. Like, she wants that. She wants that power. She wants to reclaim what she feel like it's deserving of, which is why it is always harder. And maybe it shouldn't. It's just a little bit harder for me to sympathize with women in Helena's predicament, because you are actively participating in something that is creating that culture all the time. It's the same way I felt about Shiveroy. In the same way sometimes I felt in certain moments with Alice and Hightower. You can't cry wolf when you're also helping tear the house down, really. The more scenes we see of her, the less I'm like what you're saying, my empathy is slowly deteriorating.
She just keeps ratcheting it up.
Yes.
Is what I find frustrating.
Yes.
There is something about the way that she thinks about him that feels possessive.
Yeah, it's slave master and a slave vibes. Yes. She doesn't think they're human.
She does not, and it's very upsetting.
Yeah.
And that interaction, especially when you compare that scene like you were before to what the scene that Helly and Mark had in this scene, it shows that dynamic and that attitude that she has. And then though, after that happens, To go then and hunt down Mark in real life, to flirt with him in a way that you have observed him flirt with any Helly before, to dress in that way, to have this interaction. Again, there's just something, she just cannot leave them be. She just cannot leave them alone.
Yeah.
To me, that also implies that not only does she see any Mark as not human and beneath her and something for her to possess, but she is now looking at Outie Mark in the same way.
Ooh.
Because there is no reason.
You could just leave him alone.
You could leave him alone.
Oof. Yeah.
That approach, the way that you're interacting with him, you're playing with him like a toy because you have all of this information on who he is, on who you are to him, on the type of relationship that you have, and on the fact that you guys have had sex, and you are not sharing any of that with him. There's already a power imbalance because you're his boss. Boss is boss is boss is boss, whatever. Yeah. But then there's just so many other layers to it that are just so disgusting to me. Like, I don't respect her. I can feel empathy for the things that she's experiencing, but I do not respect her as a person. Nah. I don't really see a way to redeem her character without her like really humbling herself. And I don't think that's in her nature to do. No. So
absolutely not.
The more I think about it, I think her response is, you know, while she's experiencing all of these things like the lack of agency, the harm, the threat of harm to her, the fact that she's having to, you know, go into this environment without her complete awareness where she's been harmed before and all that stuff. I think her response to that is not going to be to try to take things down, but I think it's going to be exactly what you said. She's just going to try harder to be more in control.
Yep. I do want to talk a little bit about Milchick. First and foremost, Milchick, my brother, you're going to have to learn that not all skin folk is kinfolk, if you know what I mean, bro. You got to let Natalie go. That's not your friend. That's not your ally, bro. That's not going to be there. And somebody made a good point in our comment section where they talked about during Milchick's evaluation,
he kept looking at her.
Yes. And she avoided eye contact the entire time. So now you've asked her about the painting once indirectly when you're giving her that look, and every black person knew what she was trying to say, like, what the fuck going on, right? 2, you brought it up again. You asked her twice before, and she still is resistant to helping you. And then you're looking to her for support and you're not getting it. And I think this is what makes it a little sad. I think Milchick is extremely lonely.
Yeah, he's all alone.
There is no one there to support him. And I think he, in some ways, there were moments where you could see he was trying to get some version of it with the Innies, and the scene where he's kind of like rehearsing the lines of perhaps what he wanted to say to Miss Huang. It felt like he was also telling himself to grow up, let these feelings that he feels are immature, like companionship and relationship and intimacy, let them go. Don't try to rely on individuals. Yeah, something about that felt tragic, but also unsettling. It was like he was trying to channel a version of himself that didn't exist. Like maybe even like channel what was told to him by like a father figure in his life, so to speak.
Yeah, it's definitely him like stripping away parts of himself.
Yes.
I mean, even the thing with the paper clips, when because, you know, he got the feedback last week about putting the paper clips on wrong. So then he just puts the paper clips on all those papers, and you see his hand shaking at the end.
Oh, I didn't even catch that, bro.
Yeah, his hand was literally trembling by the time he was done. And then he looks back in the folder. He's like going through the feedback one by one and being like, okay, well, how do I address this? How do I address this? Just, you know, peak people pleaser energy.
I'm nervous at all of these characters like Milchick or Natalie or Helly or even Miss Cobell have all reached a moment in season 2 where they could have turned and went back in the right direction, and they're all choosing to not do it. That's what makes me very sad, which would make very incredible tragic writing, but it's just really sad, you know, because it's like they're doubling down despite the suffering that they're encountering, that they're going through.
I do want to quickly say BURT's got to be working for LUMON.
Yo, why he keep giving Irving these looks, bro? First of all, Christopher Watkins, he has just a natural look that can give villainy. I don't really know how he does it so well. But.
Well, the thing that I'm suspicious of is, well, a couple of things. Number one, the guy who works at LUMON just conveniently knew that he would be at BURT's place for dinner and showed up at his apartment and looked through all of his paperwork while he was gone.
It was a setup.
I think it was a setup because also then his husband let slip that comment about the 20 years ago having dinner with the LUMON partner.
Yeah.
But Severance didn't exist for
until 12
years ago. So clearly he goes way back with LUMON, which leads me to believe like there's just something more going on to his affiliation with them, and what exactly is that play now. The good thing is I think Irving is suspicious too. So hopefully
my fear is that it might be too late. Like he doesn't know that his house was just broken into.
He doesn't know his house was just broken into, but hopefully he's going to try to use this relationship with BURT to his advantage in some way. Yeah. Maybe.
Cannot wait to continue watching this season and watching it with y'all. We really appreciate the thoughts that you guys have been giving us so far. So as always, we love to hear your guys' thoughts on this episode. Let us know in the comments below. We always try our best to read through all the comments that we can. And so we really appreciate your thoughts and insights. But yeah, with that, we will see you all next week, y'all. Take care, everyone. Peace.